Back to Abu Dhabi, Mr. President. Thanks for the time.
Thank you very much.
First of all, congrats on becoming a grandfather for the 11th time.
Most importantly.
Tiffany, baby Alexander.
They're a really good couple, great couple, I think. And the baby is perfect. I'll let you know about it in 21 years. But the baby is good, so we're happy about that. I look forward to seeing the baby.
Seeing you with those grandkids. This is a big trip. This is seen, especially in this region, as a major, major success with the interaction between each one of these countries. How do you see it today as you wrap it up?
Well, I always considered it to be a very important region. I know all three leaders, as you could see, very well. In all three cases, I knew them long before I ran for politics, which is sort of something. It makes it a little bit more special. They're great people. The three of them, they're great people. And it's a great region, but it was never treated properly, and it was certainly not treated well by Biden, who didn't know he was alive, frankly, so, you know, you can understand that. But he was not, they didn't treat this group well. And I think they were being, and I guess you know, because you've reported on it, they were being coaxed very strongly by China, because that solves China's fuel problem forever. And it wasn't their preference, but they were on their way. They were going to China, and that was going to be their parent, and that's not happening anymore.
Do you think you've shifted the paradigm on that?
No, I don't think. I know. We are as close. We're closer now to them than ever before. You could see the relationship. You could get a body expert and pay them a lot of money, and they could tell you, no, there's just a relationship that I have with all three that's just, you know, very extraordinary. I was even saying, you know, I mean, we're like so friendly, not a normal situation where you're okay with a leader or whatever, but this is a very important region. This is the energy capital of the world. They have, you know, massive amounts of energy and other things. They've invested wisely, and they're looking to do other things. I guess in Saudi Arabia, they said in another couple of years, there'll be more than 50% other businesses represent more than 50% of the take. And it's pretty amazing what all of them have done.
You have a massive amount of business investment coming back to the U.S. Right. And they're still adding it up in each country. Which, by the way,
most importantly, that's why I came here. I didn't come here to say, gee, you guys are rich and you have a lot of oil. You know, they have a lot of money, and I want them to spend the money in the United States. And we set records. There's never been a trip like this by any president or anybody ever before. And I'd ask them, how about doubling it up? Okay. Oh, I should have asked for more, because they said, okay. They're good people, and they love our country. And look, they have great danger because of Iran. That's their primary danger. And that makes them vulnerable. But I don't see them as being vulnerable, because I think we have the greatest military in the world. And we're adding to it now at levels that nobody's ever seen. We're going to build the Iron Dome. We deserve an Iron Dome. You know, see, we call it two names. So I was going to call it the Iron Dome because that's the name everyone has heard of for years. But to me, it was old-fashioned. So we changed it recently to the Golden Dome, the beautiful Golden Dome. And
matches
Ronald
the golden
Reagan,
age.
you know, Ronald Reagan wanted that many years ago, and he was right, except you didn't have anywhere near the technology.
I want to talk about Israel. I mean, the first trip in the first administration, when you came over to the Middle East, you did do a stop in Israel on the way back. Not doing it this time. Obviously, the Israel-Hamas and what's happening in Gaza is driving a lot. How do you see that? Are you frustrated at all with Prime Minister Netanyahu?
No, look, he's got a tough situation. You have to remember there was an October 7th that everyone forgets. It was one of the most violent days in the history of the world, not the Middle East, the world, when you look at the tapes. And the tapes are there for everyone to see. So he has that problem. That problem should have never happened. Now, if I were president, that problem wouldn't have happened because Iran had no money. They were stone cold broke, and they weren't giving money to Hamas. In fact, I remember in your show, like a year before that, you were saying, there's no money for Hezbollah, Hamas. There's like 28 different groups.
The Houthis.
The Houthis. But they have 28 groups that we know of. and none of them. They were all breaking up because there was no money. And then Biden came along, he took off all the sanctions on Iran. I mean, I put sanctions that were so strong. Anybody that did business with Iran could not do business with the United States. So everybody took a pass, including China. Biden came in, he just let everyone go by, and they became, they have over $300 billion today.
So how do you get to a solution there?
Oh, we'll get 100%.
You think so?
Well, we're going to have a solution one way or the other. It's either going to be violent or not violent. And I far prefer nonviolent. I know so many Iranians from New York, from Washington, from different places. These are great people. You have to view them as people. And I don't want it to be a violent thing, but they're not going to have a nuclear weapon.
But you said it was close the other day. You said it was close to a deal.
I think it's close.
So does that mean that they're going to enrich at any level, like a civilian level?
No, I think they want to make a deal. You say to yourself, they have massive oil, by the way. They have oil that lasts for 300 years. They have a lot of oil. People don't realize they're one of the biggest in the world. And it's very good oil, meaning it's pure, perfect stuff. They don't have to, spend a fortune on gases and energy in order to melt the rock and everything. They have pure, unadulterated, good oil. And you say, why does somebody that has that kind of oil, other than being politically correct, but when you have unlimited amounts of oil and gas, why are you putting up, why do you need civil nuclear? I just don't see it.
But I mean, are you going to call for it all?
And I think nuclear is fine. I think nuclear is fine for civil if you have a country with no oil. But if you're sitting on one of the largest piles of oil in the world, why are you talking about putting up nuclear civil? I call it nuclear civil.
And so Bibi Netanyahu is not convinced that a deal would be good for the region. Is that fair to say?
I think I can say that Bibi, he's an angry man. And he should be because of October 7th. And he's been hurt badly by that. But in another way, he's been sort of helped because I think he's fought hard and bravely.
And you think the Israel-Hamas, the situation in Gaza is going to come to an end soon?
Gaza's a nasty place. It's been that way for years. I think it should become a free zone. Freedom. I call it a freedom zone. It should become a freedom zone. It doesn't work. Every 10 years, they go back. They have Hamas. They have everybody's being killed all over the place. I mean, you ever see? You talk about crime stats. It's a nasty place.
Are these people, these countries that you were just visiting, are they going to have to be a part of the solution?
Well, they would be. They would be. I spoke to all three of them. They would absolutely be. I mean, they're really rich and really, really, really even more than rich. They're good people, and they would help. And so money's not even the problem.
You got to get countries to say yes. Take them.
Look, these are people that want to be in the Middle East. They really want to be in the Middle East. They love the Middle East. I see that. There's a spirit for the Middle East. They didn't have to go to Sweden, Germany, these different countries. They could have been home in the Middle East if somebody had the brains to build beautiful communities. 1.9 million is a lot of people, but it's not a lot of people, relatively.
You had a couple of foreign policy successes even right before this trip. You picked up the phone and called two nuclear powers, India and Pakistan, and you got them to step back from the brink. That was a success as you got on the plane heading over here.
A bigger success than I'll ever be given credit for. Those are major nuclear powers. Those are not like a little bit. And they were angry. And the next phase was probably, did you see where it was tit for tat. And it was getting deeper and more missiles. Everyone was stronger, to a point where the next one's going to be, the N-word. You know what the N-word is, right?
Nuclear.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for the clarification.
I figured you'd want to clean that up. No, it's the N-word. That's a very nasty word, right? In a lot of ways. The N-word used in a nuclear sense, that's the worst thing that can happen. And I think they were very close. The hatred was great. And I said, we're going to talk about trade. We're going to do a lot of trade. Don't forget, Iran wants to make a deal with us badly for a lot of reasons. But when you look at India, they are calling, Iran wants to trade with us, okay, if you can believe that. And I'm okay with it. I'm using trade to settle scores and to make peace. But I've told Iran, we make a deal, you're going to be very happy. But more than anything, I've told Iran very simply, because I heard somebody making my case last night on television. I didn't like it, because they were saying, there's plenty of time. There's not plenty of time. There's not plenty of time.
You feel urgency.
Well, they're not going to have a nuclear weapon, and eventually they'll have a nuclear weapon, and then the discussion becomes a much different one. But in the case of India, India wants, you know, they're one of the highest taxed or tariff nations in the world. They make it almost impossible to do business. Do you know that they're willing to cut 100% of their tariffs for the United States because of what I did? Is that deal coming soon? Yeah, that'll come soon. I'm in no rush. Look, everybody wants to make a deal with us.
So South Korea.
South Korea wants to make a deal with
India,
us, everybody. But
Japan.
I'm not going to make deals with everybody. I'm just going to set the limit. I'll make some deals. And then I'm just going to, because you can't meet with that many people. I've got 150 countries that want to make deals. You know, you have a lot of countries.
The market was really happy with the China situation and the sit down
they were.
With the Treasury Secretary.
If I didn't do that deal with China, I think China would have broken apart.
Not us, them.
We weren't going to break. We're not going to break. They would have broken apart. You know, our country has a lot of spirit. And you know why? Because of November 5th. Because our country has spirit again.
The other foreign policy shift was this embrace of Syria. You met with the Syrian president, who has a shady past of being tied to Al-Qaeda and the Al-Nusra Front in Syria, but you see promise there.
Well, before I talk about that, just one word.
Yeah.
Also Pakistan. Great conversations with Pakistan. You know, we can't forget them. And because it does take two to tango. And with India, I felt very certain. And with Pakistan, I also talked about trade. Oh, they would love to trade. They would love to trade. You know, they're brilliant people. They make incredible products. And we don't do much trading with them. And yet I have a good relationship with a lot of people that you wouldn't believe. But I stopped that war. That was going to be a nuclear war, I think, or close, very close. You were right there.
Yeah.
And now everyone's happy. In fact, I told my people, call them up. Let's start trading immediately, because I'm a man of my word. Now, when you get to Syria, so I did something with Syria because the future king, and you have a wonderful king right now. He's an older man. He's also a friend of mine, and he's 100% sharp. He's great. And he's got a great son, the Crown Prince, and he has actually many titles. He's Prime Minister, he's Crown Prince. And he's doing a great job running it. But he called me and he spoke to me and he said, could you do me a favor? Could you, and do the world a favor, could you take the sanctions off Syria? Because the only way they're going to have a chance, the sanctions are crippling, really biting. Well, that's what I did with Iran, and they came to a point where they were bust. Could you take the sanctions off? I hadn't thought about it much. And he said it in a way that was, you know, he's got a great heart. He said, they can't make it with those sanctions. I said, let's give them a chance. I met the leader. I met the new leader, and handsome guy, by the way, young, handsome. And I said, you know, you have quite a past, got a tough past. But when you think about it, are you going to put a choir boy in that position? I don't think so. You know, it's going to be a little bit tough. It's a tough part of the world. So you're willing to give him a shot? You know the word they say, it's a nasty neighborhood. It's a rough neighborhood.
Yeah.
And I thought he was really, I thought he was terrific. He was so thankful about the sanctions because he knew he's not going to be able to bust through.
So maybe it'll be a turn there. We'll see.
I think he has a real chance. He's a strong guy. He's done some pretty tough things.
A lot of the coverage here was about your speech in Saudi Arabia and some of those things that you said about trusting these countries to make their own decisions, and we're not trying to make it a mirror image of ourselves. You know, big foreign policy thoughts.
We have our own problems. Yeah. You know?
But a lot of the coverage back home was about this donation of the Qatar Boeing jet. And I've heard you talk about it.
You know, until you bring this up now, I haven't heard about it for 3 days.
I know, but I mean, I'm just telling you.
We can talk about it again. You ready?
Briefly. I heard all the answers.
Well, no, but your audience has to hear the answers. Yeah.
They're giving it to the Defense Department.
To be very simple.
Yeah.
They're giving it to the United States Air Force / Defense Department of the United States. They're not giving it to me. I made a good deal. We need a plane for a couple of years before we get the other ones because Boeing is very late. Boeing is sadly...
Did you talk to the CEO while you were...
I did. I said, let's get, in the meantime, I got them 160 planes to build. I said, how about the two that you're supposed to build for our country? Now, they are different. They're extremely complex, and I'm not going to go into it, but they're not like a normal plane. It's not like building a 747 normal.
We could put people on the moon before
but let me tell you,
the Boeing Air Force One is
people knew I was angry at Boeing. A lot of people know. These people know. They're very smart down here. And they suggested if we can do anything at all to help. Because we have 40-year-old planes right now. Our Air Force One is actually two planes. It's two 747s.
I don't think people know that. 40 years. It's 4 decades old, the current Air Force One.
They're 40 years old. They're more than that. I think they're 42 now. I've been saying 40 for 2 years. They're 42. We shouldn't have a 42-year-old plane. And you know what? There's nothing unsafe about it. In many cases, they're just as safe or more safe. They're heavier. They throw out a lot more for the environmentalists out there to turn them. They throw out a little more than a modern engine would throw out. But they're good, but they're 42 years old. And when we landed, I saw the other day, when we landed, we parked right next to the 747 of Qatar. And we parked next, there was another 747, 2 or 3 of them, which the Arab world has. And when you look at a new 747 and you look at a plane that's 42 years old, not even the same plane, the other ones are bigger and sleeker and sharper, and it doesn't look right. We have a problem with Boeing. Now, again, it's a very complex plane. It's a much different plane than a normal plane would be. Okay. And they're doing a great job. They're coming back, and they're coming back strong. But I'm angry about them for the 2 planes. They should be able to knock them off in no time, and it's, they're not able to do that. And he said, great gentleman, Tamim, he said, I would like to help if you want. I said, how can you help? Well, we happen to have a plane. And I said, well, what do you want to do? He said, you have been, and he doesn't mean me, although I have been good. He means our country has defended them, has done great things for them. They might not be there.
Base.
Look, right next to Iran, and he is right next to. He's not like an hour away. Like I flew an hour to one, I flew an hour to here, but that one you don't have to fly. All you have to do is walk right across the border if you want to. I mean, it's literally touching, right? Right next to. And he said, your country has been very good to us. I would love to do something to help with this situation you have with Air Force One. I said, that's nice. What do you suggest? And he suggested this. And I said, you know what? That's very nice. That's very nice. I appreciate it. What would be the price? He said, there is no price. I said, that's nice. Now, this plane's not for me. This goes to the United States Air Force for whoever is president. Mm-hmm. And at some point, it'll be like Ronald Reagan. It'll be decommissioned. It's 11 years old.
So it stays until it's decommissioned.
Yeah, it'll be decommissioned because they won't want it. Plus, they'll have the other 2 planes by that time, and there'll be brand new planes, etc. But I just want to say, it was a radical left story that a lot of people, including you...
And I asked the Prime Minister about it specifically. And he said, he didn't understand the reaction back home. And, he made that clear.
I think he was insulted, actually. He made a gift to help somebody that has helped them. It was so nice as a gesture. And the people here, to show you how it's crazy, they'd like me to pay $1 billion. I'd rather pay $1 billion and get 10 fighter jets instead of giving $1 billion when it's not necessary.